Hello again, it's me, Killer. Glad to see me? Yeah, I didn't think so. Ah, well, let's get on with the video then. Today's one is on the 4X strategy game you can see in the background right now, by Paradox Interactive called Stellaris, in which you build your empire and create your fleet, and go off and wipe the galaxy clean of all Xeno scum. Anyway, I figured with all the new DLC expansion, Utopia is now out and everything, and having had some time to experience it for myself, thought I'd make a video about it. And this is it. So, yay. Now, Stellaris isn't too bad a game. It certainly has potential, kind of like Elite Dangerous, but a little better used. But, unfortunately, it squanders a large part of it because the base game is a complete chore to play at this point. Like, the game isn't bad. Best part is when you're in the mid-game area, during your rapid expansion, when science is at a point where you can be happy with it, where you're tough enough that your empire won't fall apart at the touch of a hat. At this point, you tend to be developing happily and are set to go to war, or are actively doing so already. The game's main focus comes along with both combat between empires and, of course, empire management. Now, both economically and Utopia's new faction system, you manage your political factions to keep the populace happy. Unfortunately, the economic management manages to be the most fun part of them, as the combat is boring and usually dictated up by straight-up fleet power. So, without some few other factors coming into play, like fire range, fleet specifications, but 90% of fleet combat is entirely dictated by fleet power numbers, which means combat is decided from the start, usually predictable, few exceptions. The political factions themselves are mostly ignorable depending on your strategy. If you stick with a strategy matching your chosen ethics, then you should be fine, except for an absorption of a large number of pops with differing ethics. But most of the time you can get away with suppressing a faction or two and just leaving it alone. But unfortunately, the game's worst issues manifest late and early game. Now, early game isn't too bad, especially on the first couple games, but it does become just quite a drag after doing it a few times. But can still be a good bit of fun, especially with some friends and the new Unity system keeping things interesting. But late game is an utter fucking disaster. If you let the galaxy stabilize, late games becomes an absolute slog. You have to navigate through the AI's bajillion different factions and federations and all, while both trying to declare war on enough people to make a gain, while not also getting utterly destroyed by a galaxy dogpiling you. So, I mean, that's good. And late game, the Unity system becomes what is essentially a loading bar with a bonus at the end of it, while an unmoving screen and almost unchanging galaxy. Yes, it encourages you to stay small, but there has to be a balance, because if you stay in a 5x6 planet area, then you do great boost to Unity and science. But there is no way an empire that small will survive late game. During that point, one empire tends to emerge. It's kind of different when you're playing multiplayer, kind of like you see on the screen right now, where you've got a couple players going at once because they tend to balance each other out, or one player tends to get shreked early on otherwise. But so you tend to have one empire, or several empires, that emerge as a dominant force in the galaxy. And these empires tend to control a good portion of the galaxy on their own. Through, like, vassals and protectorates or whatever it is, or they just straight up own the joint. And they just have fleets that an empire can't match at the size of only 5 or 6 planets, versus a large portion of the galaxy against them. On top of this, a 5 to 6 empire planet simply can't match the output of resources that an empire the size necessary to achieve dominance in the galaxy can do. It can't. So, now thankfully, a lot of this has been addressed with the new Unity system. The megastructures now in the game can even these odds to a lesser degree, but they still only do so much. A bigger empire will consistently win, with little to no distinction. Science can even the odds between two empires with a small size difference between them. I've taken on a larger empire almost twice my size that was controlled by a friend of mine. But the only reason I won that fight is my friend was not as good as Stellaris, had mismanaged his empire, had little economic stability, and I had a fleet only a little stronger than his, although he had vassals to make up the numbers. But I had been using information I found out about his fleet specs a while ago in game, so I had a fleet which I had tooled up and was spec'd just to be able to fight him. And in that, a very specific and very rare circumstance where I, an experienced and knowledgeable player, with an in-depth knowledge about the game and a long history in strategy games, coming up against a less experienced strategy player who was less knowledgeable about the game, overconfident, and far too underprepared for my attack. If he only had half those issues, he would have stumped me more than likely. His empire size could have trumped my science, but my preparation, his lack thereof, gave me the edge I needed. But apart from that specific scenario, that one scenario, I have seen little, even after a Utopia expansion, to indicate that a smaller empire could ever trump an empire twice its size. But unlike how you expect this video to go, it's not all bad. The game can be a lot of fun. While for me right now I'm totally bored of single player, although it still adds moments, but now I'm getting into multiplayer with some friends, I'm finding that there's still some fun to be had. But this is barely holding me over. Well, megastructures hold my interest for about 6 seconds. Once you've built them once, the interest is gone almost entirely. The fanfare for such an important moment in your empire and in the game, and with such a cool idea, and just something so awesome. And the fanfare for such an important moment is so underwhelming that it's a major letdown, unfortunately. And they have yet to fix this lack of motivation. The stories still suck really badly, the results are underwhelming, and the stories don't lead to satisfied endings or rewards. This has been something that I've been begging for a fix on the Paradox forums, but have yet to receive any positive response besides a few people upvoting it. And for me at least, this is my largest problem with the game. Sometimes I simply just can't bring myself to slog through the early game and to get to alright mid-game. But with some mates, you can get through the boring early game with a bit of chat and stuff. And the push and shove between a few friends in some mid-game battling is a fair amount of fun. But without this tiny bit of motivation, probably wouldn't have touched the game in months. So, to conclude, a more positive than usual video. Game is good, albeit with some flaws that are pretty glaring once you're up to my 120 hours in the game. But still, if you like Paradox games, like space games, and like strategy games, I do give it a recommendation. There's lots of room for improvement. But you should still have some fun with it for quite a while, especially if you've got some friends to play with. Yeah, 120 hours. I think I know what I'm talking about with this game by now. So many spaceships. But anyway, guys, this is me, GamerKiller117, heading off for now. Bye, guys.